professional 140-pound fighters. First, fighting out of the Farmers Insurance red corner, an independent fighter from Brighton, Colorado. Please make welcome Johnny Jarabek. And fighting out of the West Montana blue corner, from Underground Boxing in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Please make welcome Isaac the Firecracker Johnson. Professional 140-pound bout is scheduled for 3 4-minute rounds. Referee Stephen Blair.
3 4-minute rounds in the professional division. This is our first pro fight of the night. At 140 pounds in the blue gloves, we have Isaac Johnson representing Team Underground Boxing, facing off against the independent fighter, Mr. Johnny Jarabek. He's wearing the red gloves this afternoon. Stephen Blair, again, third in the ring. Here we go. Johnson with the blue gloves, Jarabek with the red. 140-pound pro fighters. Johnson, a very accomplished professional MMA fighter, looking to put his stamp on the boxing world now. This, I believe, the second time we've seen him here at Sparta Combat League. And Jarabek, the much taller, longer rangier of the two fighters. See if he elects to keep the fight on the outside. Johnson, of course, going to have to work to bridge that gap, get on the inside. Good, powerful body shot lands for Johnson, and the fighters being warned about their head position as they come together. Jarabek pumps the jab, winds up with the bolo punch. Little showmanship from the independent fighter out of Brighton, Colorado. And Jarabek, almost tauntingly, both hands down below waist level. Then looks like he's going to take a step back, but instead fires off with a nice combination, does Jarabek. Johnson lunges in, scores well. And the corner of Johnson telling him, don't stand straight up. And I think that's wise with the taller fighter being Jarabek, not wanting to give him a good solid target to come down onto. And again, I think fighters being warned about head positioning. Jarabek scores nicely with the long uppercut. Nice job by Jarabek at twisting the hips to bring that punch forward. Put a lot of range on that uppercut coming off the back foot, did Jarabek. Johnson circles out, looks to work his way back in, taking his corner's advice, keeping that head down, keeping the stance low. And Jarabek, hand positioning wise, doing what he can to try to give Johnson some different looks. Make sure his opponent never knows quite exactly where the next punch is coming from. And Jarabek with a combination while Johnson's against the ropes. Johnson admonished by Stephen Blair for bringing the punches a little too low. There's a 10-second clacker. And Jarabek ties him up, steps back. And we're going to go to a third. I misspoke earlier. It is 4 3-minute rounds in this 140-pound professional fight. And referee giving the fighters a talking to. Not sure what about. Possibly the head positioning, as they were both warned a couple of times. Round one. Johnson biting down on the mouthpiece, stalking forward with a very determined look on his face here to start the second of 4 rounds. Jarabek looking comfortable again, a little showmanship in there. And Jarabek, nice job using his reach as Johnson is on the way out. A lot of fighters, of course, work to use that reach to keep their opponent from coming in, but Jarabek hitting Johnson on the transition as Johnson's working his way out of range. And again, the corner of Johnson asking him to drop levels. Jarabek continues switching up his look a little bit, changing his hip and shoulder position as well. Wise tactic, keeps Johnson guessing about what might be coming next and from what range. And Isaac Johnson was looking to counter that jab and saw Jarabek loading up the right hand. Jarabek is waiting for him to come in, so Johnson, good job reading that. And now Jarabek pops him on the air on his way out. And Johnson's starting to stand very tall, much to the chagrin of his corner, telling him drop levels. And both these fighters in great condition, just now here late in the second round, starting to break a sweat. Nobody slowed down yet. Nobody taking any deep breaths. Just starting to find their groove. And Johnson planting his feet once he's inside, working a little power now.
Let's go, drop levels now. There it is, nice work.
Johnson almost having to leap to bridge that gap to get into range, but once he's in there, he's fully committed to his punches, and he's scoring well. Glanced off the cheek of Jarabek that time with the left hand. There's a 10-second clacker to end round number 2. And these guys going to clinch it up to end the round. Round 3 of 4, Sparta Combat League's Pride number 4 event here in our first pro bout of the evening. Isaac Johnson in the blue gloves. Johnny Jarabek in the red. Johnson probably been the busier of the two, mostly because he has to use that footwork and that movement to get into range. Jarabek pecking away from the outside, waiting for Johnson to close in, and then doing a nice job of tagging Johnson as Johnson separates the distance. And Jarabek, as he's done throughout the fight, clowning a little bit, had his tongue hanging out just a minute ago. Johnson, however, not being drawn into it. And Johnson has done a good job all throughout this fight of working the body, rights and lefts. And slip there. As soon as something other than the soles of the feet touch, referee's going to step in, clean off the gloves if they touch the mat. And Jarabek just came across the cheek of Johnson with that one. One of those, oh, but what for could have been. And Johnson, as we spoke about him maybe being the busier of the two, having to move more in there. Looks like he's starting to breathe just the tiniest little bit through his mouth, opening up his jaw a little bit. And a little stagger in the footwork of Johnson there. Finally, he gives Jarabek a smile back. Jarabek looks to plaster Johnson against the ropes, but Johnson saw it coming, got his head off center line. And looks like here later on in the third, Jarabek maybe trying to get a little bit busier. Referee warns him that that was a push. Wasn't the punch that took Johnson's feet. Johnson plants his feet, waits for the counter to present itself. Able to split the guard with the jab was Jarabek. Corner Johnson telling him to double up the jab and come forward as he does. And Jarabek, again, taunting his opponent with the hands down. There's the 10-second clacker. And both these guys trying to put a punctuation on the end of the third. Round number 4, touch of gloves for sportsmanship, and we'll get this final round going in this 140-pound pro fight. All through the fight, of course, Johnson had to work to bridge that gap, try and get in close. He's done a nice job of working the body when he gets in there. Jarabek doing a good job using the range. Countering Johnson, he shows it right there. Johnson plants his feet, looks to answer back. Johnson scored well with the left hand there. Jarabek immediately came back. And we're coming into some of the best exchanges of the fight right here. Impressive that these guys are not only keeping their speed, their timing, and their accuracy, but putting a lot of power in there too as we go late into the fight. So conditioning on point for both these guys as they're keeping the entirety of their game plan together here late in the rounds. And Johnson saw the counters coming that time, ducks nicely. Jarabek covers up, looks to answer the flurry. Gonna have the referee get involved here for just a moment. He hasn't been too busy in this fight other than early in the round making sure the guys were watching their head positions. Otherwise, everybody keeping them pretty clean. Johnson again leaping across the gap. And Jarabek now, his mouth open just the tiniest bit, taking a couple of deep breaths. Not slowing down on the punches, however. And Johnson eats a hard counter as he steps forward. Jarabek senses it. Nice job by Jarabek here late, putting together combinations. Corner of Johnson calling for the overhand punch, and he almost scored with it there. Shows to the experience of Johnson here late in the fight, still hearing his corners, still taking instructions, carrying out what they ask of him. And little rabbit punch to the kidneys there by Jarabek. And Johnson staggered as he comes forward, gets his feet under him quickly though. There's the 10-second clacker. And Jarabek going to be happy to circle away a little bit here to end the fight. We'll take it to the judges.
After 4 rounds, we go to the judges' scorecards. All 3 judges ready to score them out 40-36. Declaring your winner by unanimous decision, Johnny Jarabek. All right, Sean in the ring with Johnny. Johnny, take me through that fight. Looked like a pretty dominant performance from start to finish. How important were your counters coming in as that guy wanted to get in pretty close?
First off, I just want to thank God and my family and all my sponsors and everybody who played part of this. I don't do this by myself. It's all their hard work just to come to fun, so I just got to thank everybody. But back to your question, it was a dominant performance, but he was tough as hell. He came up, fought a great fight, but I'm just over 11.
Certainly, man. What's next?
Whatever fight's next, I'm just trying to get these guys out of the way, try to get to the big spot where I believe I should be.
A lot of people here, I'm sure there's more people that thank you before you go.
I want to thank everybody who came out tonight, everybody who supports me. I cannot do any of this without any of you guys. I love your mom, thank you for everything you do. I love everybody, thank you guys so much.
Congratulations on the victory. Give that once again to the winner, Johnny Jarabek.